Cloud. All right.
Got it.
Yes, I am so happy to be here with Graciela Moore, who has recently graduated Journey Coaching Intensive, and this will be the first recording I'm doing for season 4. So I'm excited about that as well. I'm very to have her as a first guest. But yeah, she is currently doing a series called the Hope Series, and it is inspired by her own journey and also, the journey she's gone through, the Journey Coaching Intensive, and all the things she's learned that way, getting her coaching credential. Graciela, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, John. I'm super excited. You just said like 10 different things that I should be so happy and grateful for, and I am. So yeah, thank you so much.
Right, right. And so your Instagram handle is Song of Myself. And the first time we talked, you mentioned that because I just thought, it's one of those things that people pick because I don't, even though I put a lot of meaning behind a lot of the names that I give myself or the things I do, I don't assume that other people do the same thing, but it was refreshing to know that you do. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it really, kind of lets people know who you are without completely letting them know who you are in a sense, like without, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very interesting how you put that together. So Song of Myself. So I'm a literature major, right? Total nerd. I went to school as an English major in literature and film. And back when Instagram first came out, do you remember Facebook first was just for students, and
Right.
then Instagram was just for some other type of demographic? I don't remember. And so I'm one of the OGs, I
Yeah,
guess, because I've had it from the very beginning.
nice.
And for some reason, I didn't want my name to be the handle.
Right.
And so I love the poem Song of Myself by Walt Whitman.
Mhm.
I completely nerded out in it when I was in college. And now looking back at my journey and doing all of this work on myself, right? I figured out that it's like it just brought me back full circle to that handle and to that name and to the poem itself and all that's within it. So Song of Myself Coaching, LLC is now a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just so excited to just dive deeper into the concept, the juice of that poem that Walt Whitman really brought into the world. It's really just about mindfulness, and it's about connecting to the deepest truth about yourself,
Mhm.
and really all of these things that we keep hearing about in the wellness industry.
Right.
They've been in this poem since freaking
Yeah, yeah.
1892, and I'm just like amazed by how this experience have brought me full circle to that. It's been really cool.
So what do all of those things mean for you, and what drew you to that poem specifically, like in the beginning? What was the first thing about it that really kind of hooked you?
Wow. Well, to be honest, that's more of a question that I would have to ask like a therapist, maybe someone who would hypnotize me or something like that.
Interesting.
Because I don't know. There's a lot in the literature world that I completely adore. Emily Dickinson, Shakespeare. I treasure Victorian literature, Dracula, Penny Dreadful, all of these types of narratives, Edgar Allan Poe. So I don't know, Song of Myself. You know what, to be honest, I think it would the most natural answer to that question right now is the fact that I grew up in a musical
Right.
household, and the fact that our dad was a musician and we all went to music school and we all sing.
Right.
So singing has always been part of the equation for me. And
Mhm.
then the poem itself, I mean, I loved it. So
Right, right. Well, and the common thread between all those things that you mentioned, and you're the literature major, not me, so you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but the um the common thread that I noticed throughout all of those things is that all of those things were from periods and from people where people put a lot of thought into their words and the language they used, like a lot of thought into it. It wasn't just like this word means this. It was like, oh, does this word really mean that? And like finding the perfect words, whether that was due to rhyme scheme, whether that was due to rhythm, whether that was due to trying to make the perfect point, whether people were trying to make multiple points by saying one thing with double meanings. Those were all pieces from periods and people from periods who really put a lot of thought into almost every word they wrote. So it makes sense that I don't know whether the Song of Myself or the literature study came first, but it makes sense that someone who is a literature major would be attracted to something that had those elements.
Yes. And what you just described is really interesting because, and this is something that I learned in my research as a coach, researching the poem, trying to figure out how to see the poem and that literature of piece of American literature, how to see it with that coaching lens. And as it turns out, people like Shakespeare, who created their own language because they needed
Right.
the English of the time was not enough for them to express, for him to express himself. So he created a whole new language, and he created all of these very specific poetic rules that were expected at the time, like rhyme scheme and rhythm and resonance.
Yeah.
And right. And so in come the transcendentalists and Walt Whitman, and he puts this poem out there and it defies all of those rules and quote unquote bylaws of poetry at the time. So this guy just wrote something amazing. He wrote something revolutionary. He put his life work into it. I mean, it started with just a poem. Now it has like 42 different parts or 56 different parts. And it's a portion of the Leaves of Grass work, which is his entire life's work, right?
Okay, wow.
Yeah. And so anyway, yeah, he dared. Leaves of Grass is his life's work. That's his life's work, Walt Whitman's life's work.
I meant like where do you think that title came from though?
Oh, I don't remember. But in Song of Myself, he actually has the first metaphor about the leaves in the grass. And that is like, we are all, each of us, one leaf in that entire green landscape. We are all part of, this bigger picture.
Right.
And that translates exactly to what I learned and what I want everyone to understand. As a coach.
So. And that also implies there's actually similar ideas in the Baha'i faith, which is this idea. It's repeated by multiple figures in the faith. This idea that we're all that everyone is flowers of the same garden. We all rise from the same soil, but we might have different journeys to the top. And that's that's kind of what that reminds me of, is the whole leaves of grass, is this idea that even though we're all individual leaves of grass, we're all we all come from the earth. We all come from the same source, and that does fit a very transcendental point of view. So how has transcendentalism, kind of impacted you as a person? And also how does the impact of these ideas that you're mentioning inform your coaching practice?
So those are two different questions, right? Like how it impacted me, and maybe not, because it really just, what I'm trying to do as a coach is really just resonating what I just figured out for myself, right? And when it comes to transcendentalism, it has to do with understanding that everything you need is within you. Now, here's the thing. If you believe in a higher power and there's a name for that higher power that you believe in, like God or the Holy Spirit or Allah, or however you call that, then essentially you're not a transcendentalist. And I find that extremely fascinating. However, I do believe that all of the tools for me to handle the life that I've been given are within me. And that's where it clicked for me. The term and the whole concept of transcendentalism. So how have I managed to get to this point in my life where I am hopeful, of service, whole and happy and in a flow and flourishing enough to be able to share that? Which is the whole thing about the Hope series, is how do you master the concept of hope so that you can truly be in service of others by lending your hope out, which is borrowed hope, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, it does. But if you could you elaborate a little bit more on what on what the aim of the Hope series is? Because that's a 4-week series, right?
It is. So the goal, you just really went straight to the goal of it, and I love that.
Okay.
It's to achieve a brightness of hope, a perfect brightness of hope. So that's what I call it. It's really a term from our church, from my church, that I'm trying to just coin it to the coaching arena, because it's just like, it just sounds so nice, a perfect brightness of hope. Anyway,
Right, right.
in the psychology world, and according to the work of Julie Naras in Apprentice to Hope, it's what she calls mature hope. So that's like the optimal um level of hope, if you want to call it levels. And someone that has that level of hope within them can wait, can perform under pressure, can just do all of these things that we may be struggling with day to day, that we really just want to get over the hurdle and just achieve. We want to achieve, whether it's a
Mhm.
small goal or a big goal. We all want to be able to achieve, so that the machine keeps going forward and this world just keeps on growing, right?
Right.
Because that's life, a series of achievements or failures, and how we
Yeah.
handle each of them has a lot to do. So yeah, the goal of the series is how to understand the mindset of hope, the habits of hope, and how it interacts with us on the day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like the term you used there, mature hope. And I would kind of put that in the same category as faith in a very general sense of the word. Like it's this idea that because and you and I have talked about this, it's like the Spanish language's idea of hope, esperar, where it's like, it's waiting and hoping are the same thing. They go hand in hand. There's kind of an impatient hope though that grabs a lot of us, where it's like, "Ooh, this is what I want. Gimme, 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 gimme." And then when we don't get it, we have clinged to it so hard that we cling to the illusions of our own ego sometimes so hard that we don't enjoy, the things that are being handed to us and make the best out of them. And so we don't see that, we viewed a lot of gold as turds, like it's just it gets real ugly for us sometimes because of that reason. So I think that is a great way of putting that forth. And also the idea that, this idea of, I think sometimes in our culture we have this idea that, it's an either or thing. Either the power comes from within you or it comes from somewhere else. I've always been someone who's been kind of a both and kind of person, like you mentioned the Holy Spirit in Christianity. I think in Christianity sometimes, when I would go to church, I'd hear, it was almost like when people would talk about the Holy Spirit and people would talk about God the Father, they were talking about two different aspects for a reason, because the Holy Spirit seems like the empowerment aspect and the God the Father seems like the faith aspect, and then the Son seems like the mediator between the two. And in Hinduism, they do a thing that they have this idea of Atman is Brahman, where Atman is the higher divine self rather than the egotistical lower self. And Atman, when fully realized, is no different than Brahman, which is the great whole, universal spirit. Um, and I've always thought that there is, I've always kind of viewed it as a yes and for that reason, because it's like, no, when we are fully realized and we're rooted rather than reaching, then
Mhm.
we can achieve these types of things. And that seems like a sort of in a roundabout way saying what you just said in terms of the message of your Hope series.
That's right. I love what you just said about rooted rather than reaching. That was beautiful. Um, and it's interesting that you bring Hinduism into the conversation, because that was one of the first things I found out when I started researching hope through
Mhm.
a coach lens, right? So this all really started with me being called to talk about hope at
Mhm.
church. Oh, Sister Moore, we want you to give a talk about hope in Christ. And I did that, and that was awesome. And we
Mhm.
could be here all day talking about that. But the coach in me just couldn't stop there. I had to research it and just keep digging as of the hope concept in general.
Mhm.
And that's when I realized that it transcends,
Right.
ding ding ding, there's that word, right? It transcends cultures, socioeconomic status. It transcends political views. We all need hope. We all have hope, borrow it, lend it out.
Mhm.
We cling to false hope all the time. Too high expectations or too realistic expectations. I don't know. We cling to hope in so many different ways, no matter who we are, what we do, or what we have, that I just couldn't resist it. I just kept working on
Yeah.
it. And now there it is, and I'm very, very excited to just offer that to my clients and to everyone who just wants to discover, hope from a general point of view.
Right. And I feel like in a time where, the world is undergoing a pandemic at the moment, things seem hopeless to a lot of people because people feel isolated, they feel trapped, they feel scared because there is a loss of control. I mean, whenever there's something that we don't have control over, that's when we tend to lose hope a lot of times because it's like, oh, well, if I can't control the external things, then what power do I have? Well, and then we forget that we have power over ourselves.
Mhm. Yep, that's right. And so it's one thing that really keeps me going and holding on to that poem itself and to the concepts within it, the mindfulness, the confidence that Walt Whitman describes and whatnot, um, is the fact that despite faith or doctrine or even personal relationships, my child, my spouse, my family, um, through it all, what I realized and learned is really through it all, um, my conviction, my intuition, me owning my mistakes, and me taking in all of life's lessons and just being with myself has always been the constant. And
Right.
so that's where really the whole inspiration to, as a coach, focus on mindfulness.
Hmm.
So the poem talks a lot about mindfulness, focus on confidence, and just focus on hope, because I feel like now all three of them, they go hand in hand. They're like the ingredients that I keep finding a constant in my life. And I mean, I'm happy and thrilled to be doing all the things that I'm doing, thanks to Journey and thanks to Instagram and thanks to you. And so I want everyone to feel the same. I really
Right.
do.
No, I feel the same way. So could you tell me a little bit more about how you got involved with Journey and what you talked a little bit about what led you into life? Was hope, was this idea of hope and studying hope what led you into life coaching, or was that kind of where your life coaching journey took you? And if so, what did get you into life coaching?
So, what got me into life coaching was me realizing that I was interested in psychology,
Hmm.
and then narrowing it down to positive psychology, and then deciding that I wasn't going to go back to school to pay a lot of money for any type of degree in psychology, right? And then it was pretty late in the night, and I'm very strict with my bedtime. It's one
Hmm.
of the ways that I am mindful and try to keep my anxiety at bay, is to
Hmm.
like be consistent with my bedtime. So I really didn't want to get up and just be on my computer. So I said, let me see what podcasts there are out there on positive psychology and just see what
Hmm.
I hear and see. I wanted that to be like the first sample.
That's a nice way to go to
And
sleep too.
yeah, exactly. And then I landed on the Everything Life Coaching podcast from Noelle and John. And I mean, the rest is history. Now here I am certified, because really that was it. I listened to the one episode, I went to sleep, and the next day I booked the call, and then I enrolled, and everything in my life conspired for me to like be in that cohort and do the work at the time that I did, and now I'm certified.
Right.
Yay!
And as we mentioned, you weren't, while you were reaching for something, you didn't necessarily know what you were reaching for. Like you didn't say, I'm going to be a life coach, and then, you know, like be a life coach. You were like,
I didn't even know what life coaching was. I didn't
right,
even know it was
exactly.
a thing. Yeah.
Because you were rooted in what you wanted, you found you were able to see something, without a veil in front of you when it came your way. And that's, I think, such a nice way of that ties in so well with your Hope series and the idea behind it, because of the idea that you know, that's kind of how I got into this in a lot of ways, into life coaching. And I'm at the very, very beginning of this, of my coaching journey, or at least my certification journey. Apparently apparently I'm farther along in my coaching journey than I thought, because I have been having opportunities that I'm very grateful for come up, because but that's because I was just throwing myself at things, an opportunity would arise and I'd be like, sure, I'll try that. And then I'd enter a space and then people would be like, you're doing good at this. And I'm like, okay. and,
Yeah.
and so that's what led me here. It wasn't like, because I remember a family member said to me, because he was trying to explain, he's from a different generation. He was trying, and his generation, he's from the era of the Great Depression, where it's like, oh, if you have a job, like, you keep it, like, like you need to find a stable job, support yourself, you got to have a steady paycheck, which there absolutely is merit in that. There's absolutely, truth to that, because it's scary to take a leap, it is, especially when you don't have the means to do so. I just was fortunate enough that I did at the time. But he said, so you have a dream. And I was like, I don't know if I'd call it a dream as much as it is a vision. Like, it's like I'm seeing a path ahead of me. It's not like I've dreamt for this moment all my life. It's more like I'm seeing a path ahead of me, and it just feels like the right path to take, because everything else seems to just kind of be barricading up in front of me. And this is the only path that doesn't seem to be barricading at the moment. I was just trying to follow the signs, and it seems like it's leading me down a good path. And I used to be a person who never, ever followed my intuition. I'd be like, well, I don't have any evidence that my intuition is true, which is not how intuition works at all. Like, so I would end up being wrong every time. But I also think back then I didn't have a good enough meter to understand what was intuition and what was ego.
Yeah. But now right?
Mostly. I don't like, because I know the second I assume that I have it completely down, I'll go right back into falling into my ego. So I'm very careful about that.
Yeah, well, that's great self-awareness right there. Even the fact that you can recognize it and say that you're careful about it, which is awesome. And really, the whole intuition thing is how you asked me earlier, what was it about my story or my journey that which one came first, right? So was it the hope, or was it my journey, or was it the whole life coaching thing? And it was really all about me thinking and being quite stressed about it, to be honest. Me thinking about my niche. Is that how we say it? Niche, about my niche.
I've heard a million different ways of saying
I
it.
know,
Actually,
right?
the French way of saying it is niche, but I'm not very good at French, so
Yeah.
niche.
And just figuring out, putting two and two together. So it's like your message and the person that's going to receive it, your niche, they really do go hand in hand. And I love what, I think you were in that conversation when John Kim said about branding, and about your story is you start from within. And then you go outward, right, into figuring it out, where I found that figuring out my niche was the same thing. And so it's like, what do I really want to put out there? Well, I want to put out there the light and the confidence and the hope that come from, looking within and being resilient and working on all of these mindfulness things that make you able to go from point A to point B. And it's really because looking back at my story growing up and my college experience and what brought me to the US and everything, hope was, all over it. And now putting two and two together, this is really what I feel like I want to do with my life. And I'm really excited to figure it out. Like, I'm already 36. I'm super excited to like figure it out already.
36 is not old. Well, I'm 29, and if 36 is old, then I'm very close to old. So it's
well, neither of them are old, but you're still 29 and I'm not.
I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's really no, it's, and I remember when John Kim said that, it was another thing that kind of fit with an intuition I had, because I've been kind of doing some things that I had, been trying to figure out, like, well, because I've been doing a lot of like character studies, not like formal character studies, but just like looking at different people in the industry or in, similar industries, or people who had started their own businesses. And I was trying to look at, well, what am I trying to be and what am I not trying to be? and then also who am I, and I wrote something down one day, and I think it might have been before, but I'm not entirely sure, before that meeting we had with John, where it was like and I wrote something down where it said it's better to build a brand out of your character than a character out of your brand. And I was like, okay, maybe that's my North Star here, because I was trying to find the common element between people who resonated with me and people who seemed phony, and the people who seemed phony were the people who seemed like it was, oh, people told them this is what they like about them. So I'm sorry. They saw things and they're like, people like this, so I'm going to do this, instead of like just doing things and then people responding well and then kind of leaning into what people respond well to. Because I even noticed that when I was starting my podcast, I would try, like, even in my second season, there are some episodes where it's just, when I've listened back to them now, I've just, like, I listen from time to time, I listen back on random episodes just to see, like, what should I change? What should I mix? Listening to my whole catalog now would be way too much. God, that blows my mind to even say that. But yeah, it's like, there's some episodes in season 2 where I go back and listen to, and I'm like, oh, shut up. Please shut up. Like, you are talking completely out of your ass. Just shut up right now. This is like no one cares about your opinion. I don't mean like no one cares about my opinion, but like, people don't need your opinion on this. This is not what you should be using this platform for, to spout off things that you really should be leaving to a guest who is more knowledgeable about than you are, because then I'm defeating the entire purpose of my podcast when I do that. And I realized I was trying to do that because I was like, well, maybe I need to be current, maybe I need to focus on this, maybe I need to but the thing that was working for me from the beginning was just bring people on, ask them good questions, have interesting conversations with them, make sure they enjoy themselves, make sure you enjoy yourself, and hope people learn from it. And I realized that that was going back to source for me. Like, that was whatever my substance was, that was my substance that I needed to draw from.
Yeah, and that's super cool. For me, oh my gosh, what's the substance that I need to draw from? I would say refrigerated Coca-Cola, gluten-free gummy bears. Those are the kind of sources. Reese's Pieces. Yes.
Yeah.
Because, I have a toddler and he sucks the energy out of me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a little sugar kick every now and then gets me going and allows me to be productive.
Yeah, how does being a mom affect you in this? Because I'm doing all of this with no kids at the moment. And I can't imagine what going through this kind of transition while having a child would be like.
It's very interesting.
As you yawn,
and thank you. I know, as I yawn because it's the end of a long day. No, I'm kidding.
Right. No. I'm pointing that out as evidence of how hard you're working,
Thank you. So it's really sweet that you ask me that and that you be inclusive and ask about life as a mom. Here's the thing. I'm so blessed to be able to do these things and have a practice and reach people and connect with people from the comfort of my home. This
Mm-hmm.
is such a privilege. I do not take it for granted, not once.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do our best. We have a happy, healthy toddler. He's 2 months and 2 years and 4 months, not 2
Mm-hmm.
months. Oh, he was sweet though when he was tiny. 2 years and 4 months. And so that's all that matters, happy and healthy and, super funny and smart.
Mm-hmm.
And this really, anything that has to do with life coaching, speaking, and connecting, I do when he's sleeping. So, do we plan our life around his sleeping schedule? Yes, we do.
Okay.
And I managed to sleep train him, which is great
Mm-hmm.
because he's a picky eater. So at least I have that win that he is
Mm-hmm.
sleep trained. So every night he goes to bed at the same time, no fuss, no tears. And every day he goes to nap at the same time, no fuss and no tears. and I live, hoping and praying that that doesn't stop. But everyone keeps telling me that he's going to drop the naps at some point, and he's 2 years and 4 months and has not dropped the naps.
But he's
So,
not having tantrums, and he's almost 3. So, and that's what I
oh,
when I
he
was
has
a kid,
tantrums, but not over sleep,
that's what I
not over bedtime.
my parents told me when I was a kid, like I would have every time I would try to go to bed, they would have to do these crazy, like, voodoo exercises, like just like my dad would have to do like 50 deep knee bends with me in his arms or something, and move the muscle. I would wake up and start screaming.
Really
So
extreme.
you have something figured out there, and if
Yeah.
he's still doing this before 3, I would imagine he's not going to be a difficult sleeper after that. I don't know.
Right.
That's probably, again, I'm talking outside my wheelhouse, but
Right. No, and he's going to grow and he's going to change. And, potty training is going to be dramatic. And I haven't started that for lots of reasons. And it's like, it's, I just take it day by day, because what happens, here's the thing about being an entrepreneur and being a business owner and running a business and having a child with you attached to your hip. I could have a full day plan tomorrow and I could wake up to a sick child.
Right.
And you really do have to either get help, for the whole day, or put things on hold and maneuver and be flexible. And you really just do take it day by day when you have a small child, because the older ones, they just go to school and they come back and they do their thing. But he's really the baby, right? Because he's only 2.
Right.
So yeah, and it's great that my husband also works from home, but he really works full time. So, he spends all day in his office.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I love that I'm home with my child. I wouldn't change that for the world.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what got you into into studying lit? You said you were a literature major or an English major? Or are they basically the same thing?
So, so there's English literature. So that would be literature from England, right?
Okay.
And there's also English literature, meaning literature as a whole in the English language.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. So here's the thing. So growing up in Puerto Rico, where it's a Hispanic country, even though it belongs to the United States, right?
And it's bilingual there, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly. So if you graduate high school, well, first of all, English is part of the curriculum from pre-K to senior year. It is
Right.
never an elective. You take Spanish language arts and you take English language arts from the moment you start school in pre-K to the moment you graduate high school. So, Romeo and Juliet that the kids read here in like 10th grade, we read it in 10th grade. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe that people read when they're a junior or a senior, we read it as well in school in Puerto Rico. And so English was always it for me growing up. I loved it. I wanted to learn it. I was obsessed with it. And so when it came time to fill out my college applications, I was like, well, what do you like? I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I like the English language and I like reading, and I'm applying for a school in the island. So I'm not going to study literature in Spanish because Spanish is not my thing. So I went to the University of Puerto Rico on an English major,
Right.
but instead of taking the linguistics track, I took the literature track.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
So
and I got to read from people from all over. And then, sorry, just to finish the
no,
question,
no problem.
then I was just discussing this with my stepdaughter. She's a sophomore in college. And I took an extra year. So I didn't graduate for 5 years. I took an extra year because they came up with the film certificate, and I went and I did the film certificate as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So then that's it. That's the whole answer.
Okay. So in Puerto Rico then, and basically your people are raised knowing English and Spanish from early childhood to adulthood, essentially. So it's people speak English fluently and Spanish fluently. They're completely, like, almost the entire population, right?
No.
No.
So it's like everything. You're exposed to it, but not necessarily. Like, I didn't grow up with cable forever because at some point my parents couldn't afford it, right? So, but did I have movies? Yes. I consider myself extremely lucky and blessed that for first, second, and third grade, I had an American teacher that did
Gotcha.
not speak Spanish as my English teacher. What a foundation. Like, there's no
Mhm.
doubt that that may have, formed some sort of foundation that now we could, think back and
Mhm.
ponder on, right? Did I have friends that were completely bilingual like me? Yes.
Mhm.
Did everyone even in my own family speak English like me and my friends did? No. It's really like a generational thing, I think, like, because,
I would believe
yeah,
that.
I don't know. Yeah,
I would believe
right?
that because there's other countries around the world where, like, I mean, Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, but there are countries that are not part of the United States at all. That, now in even a lot of countries in Latin America and even over in Asia and especially in Europe, where English is a required course now. And there's actually countries in Asia where, I have a friend from Turkey who said, yeah, even though Turkish is the first language here, like people make fun of you for your ability to speak English or not. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah. I was like, but it's not their first language. Of course, like they're not going to speak it perfectly. Why would someone make that? Seems like kind of hypocritical. She's like, it's a class thing, it's a.
Mm.
And I was like, that's so interesting. And I think about the Spanish because I was, I've had some people who I've been in close relationships before with, Spanish speakers, and um, I took Spanish for 11 years in this country, and one of them, when I met someone who was like a Spanish teacher from her country, which people don't get here, is that like a Spanish teacher for Spanish speakers is like an English teacher here. Like they're not teaching them Spanish, they're teaching them about Spanish. Like they're teaching
Right.
them like it's that kind of thing. And I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, I imagine, but my audience might not know that. But anyway, some of the Spanish teachers I had here, it was like the brand of Spanish we learned was this weird mishmash of Castilian, but also like not Castilian, and like kind of it was so like there's all this malleability that needs to go on because there's all these intricacies. Mexico has some weird slang, like some
Mhm,
very
mhm.
unique, I don't want to say weird, I'll say unique slang that, doesn't exist in a lot of other places. There's also another thing that people don't think about is different languages have different accents. And some people are like, what did that person say to me? I'm like, I couldn't understand their accent. What do they, and they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, they sounded like they were from this country, and it wasn't as easy for me to understand that accent from this country. And they're like, what? I'm like, do you not get that? Like just like English speakers have different accents. Like you go to Britain, people speak a different kind of English. You go to Australia, people speak a different kind of English. Like it that's something that I didn't have to think about until I was exposed to it more. But how has was one of the things that where Spanish has been valuable for me is, or at least I won't say Spanish, but just knowing another language has been valuable to me, is it informs me in my native language in a lot of ways. I gain new perspectives on words in my native language that I didn't know before, and even gaining some familiarity with like Greek and Hebrew and Persian just from religious texts and stuff. I wouldn't ever claim to speak those languages, but having some familiarity with them informs different things. And when you see different common threads in language, it's so fascinating. And it really does make me think of things differently, like the whole Esperar thing. That's like the top example I always use about how language shapes culture. So how has your bilingual upbringing kind of shaped your coaching practice and also your desire to study English? And what was it that drew you to the English language so strongly, that gave you such an affinity for it?
Um, well, other than the exposure, I would say, I mean, it was really just about the fact that nobody around me was speaking it,
Mm-hmm.
but there it was in front of the TV, like in front of me on the TV. And so it's almost like I grew up always hoping for more than what was around me.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a negative way. I had a great childhood. I was blessed with, parents that cared and supported and provided, right? So it was really just about the language itself. That's
Mm-hmm.
crazy to me. How really, if I had felt so passionate about it as a senior filling out my applications, I
Mhm,
probably would have realized that more than the storytelling, the language itself was the interesting thing. So I would have studied linguistics. But
mhm.
the whole storytelling thing pulled me because I knew my story and I wanted to change it.
Right,
How
right.
interesting is that, right? Um, and so I go into literature. And I write and I became a published poet. Did this and that, and it was always about the stories that I was living versus the stories that I imagined, the stories that I read about, the stories that I treasured.
Mhm.
And then really now, how does it, you know, reflect back on my coaching? Well, coaching is about today and forward.
Right.
So, right. So let's figure out the highlights of the story that brought you to this place right now
Mhm.
so that we can take those highlights and bring them to the future and bring them
Right.
forward and just use them as the tools and
Mhm.
figure out more tools of coping and just realizing and materializing our goals and what we want to do.
Right.
Really, that's how I was able to tie it all together, and it all started with that call to, I don't know, talk about hope.
Yeah, yeah. So beyond the Hope series, once that's done, what's the next step you're looking at, if there is one? Or are you kind of like, let's see what happens?
Well, the hope series is never going to be done
Gotcha.
because
Okay.
it's something that at any given time any one of my clients may say, I want to do that next.
Okay. So this
Okay,
is
well
like an
then let's,
introduction.
yeah, well then let's take the 4 weeks to look at hope in your life. That's
Okay.
awesome. Let's do the hope series. What was exciting about doing it right now is, and it's very interesting, John, that we're discussing this on the Saturday after, because listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
I went through the program and I graduated last Sunday,
Right.
and the last I would say that the last 5 weeks of the program, I was actively doing the intensive and preparing to launch my business at the same time. So for 5 weeks, I was working on that goal of graduating Sunday and then launching the website and the Hope series on Monday. So as launching my business on Monday, right?
Right.
Well, I went ahead and I did that. The Hope series was great. The website, there's a few things to still like fix on the website, but it's out there and you
Mhm.
can go see it. And then I crashed on Tuesday.
Right. Well, you should have.
And then I crashed on Wednesday, and it's like I'm still building up again
I know.
because my body was on such a high. Produce, create. Here's this inspiration, here's this class, do this homework. It is really intense. That's why they call it an intensive.
Right, right.
Have this conversation with this person, fix this in the Hope series, fix that, and then you did it.
Mm-hmm.
You freaking did it. And so, to be honest, that proves to me that this whole thing about resilience
Right.
and being up to date with like your health and your wellness, it is
Mhm.
really real. You cannot achieve and not take moments of rest, moments to gather yourself and to tune in. And I've taken the whole week to do that. So I'm just
Right.
ready to get back to it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic and congratulations. And I'm so glad
Thank
that
you.
this is really that you're starting to see your vision become a reality. It's been a tough balance for me to strike as well because I've been kind of going through constant changes over the past year, just, whether that was leaving, whether that was, you know, living arrangements or leaving my job or, or different, interactions and relationships in my life or whatever it may be. And I've been so focused on the mental and the spiritual that I've been, one of the things I have, there's been certain things that I've been, not tending to. And I realized that I have a tendency to want to do everything all at once, like all at once. And I've had to like rein myself in and be like, no, 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 no. this is for down the line, or maybe set like, or like say, this is the day you're going to start this. And in the past, I would do that. I would have to try to do everything all at once in the moment I did it, because it was like, if I didn't, I'd procrastinate. But now there's so much coming at me that I have to almost do the opposite. I have to procrastinate to some extent, and not in the way where it's like I'm procrastinating for the sake of procrastinating, but more like so I don't get overwhelmed. Like I mentioned to my therapist, I said I'm setting goals and I'm reaching them about a week behind the dates that I'm setting for when and it's not like I set like a hard, like I had this all written down somewhere. It's more like, I think by next week I want to have this done, and then it'll be 2 weeks before it's done, and it's not like anything major that couldn't wait. It's just like, I've learned that I have to be okay with that to some extent, that not everything, because when I first left my job, I was like, I'm going to start my coaching business. I'm going to go to coaching school. I'm going to build a media network. I'm going to do all these things. And then when I tried to do all those things at once, it ended up turning into nothing, there was a point where I realized I have to settle down and said, chunk this, take this pieces at a time. That's when I finally signed up for Journey. And I was like, let's take the plunge on that. Because I went into Journey thinking like, oh, all these people are already going to have their business licenses and they just need the credential. But no, that's not what I found at all. And that's not a knock to anybody, because there's a part of me that wonders if I should have done it that way now instead of doing it like completely ass backwards. But, I don't know. But I'm kind of working with what I'm being given. It's the whole hope thing. I'm trying to stay grounded. I'm trying to stay rooted. I'm trying not to, reach too much. And I think that you are. I envy you in a lot of ways, in the sense that now you're finished, because I just want to be done. And I was doing so much of this from a phone instead of a laptop, and that was causing difficulties getting assignments done. And so getting caught up so it's nice to see someone finish this, and also starting the process, starting to succeed, because it reminds me, okay, this is possible. This can happen, as long as you keep patient, as long as I don't overwhelm myself, and as long as I, don't, get all grabby. Like,
Yeah. And really, we all do things at different pace, and we all come, what I discovered in the intensive experience was that um grabbing and using the tools from that you bring to the table already from the moment that you get into those classes
mhm,
may work in your favor. So I come from a background of sales and consulting. So
mhm,
figuring out the business side of it is not something that I, as an individual, am new to.
mhm,
And so, am I new to the whole coaching conversation? Yes. Am I new to the concept of launching a business? No. So, for me, it really aligned, quite interestingly. And it also has to do with how we define success, right? So, and the fear of failure, that
which can also
seems
lead to a fear
to
of
that.
success.
Right, right. Well, obviously, you're afraid of failing. Nobody's afraid of succeeding. We're afraid of failing, right? And so the thing is that being called to talk about hope, right? And
Mhm,
attaching that to the spirit, to like a real calling of mine.
right,
Like, I have been called to talk about hope. What that means for me is that this coaching thing is amazing and I'm very blessed with it, but I'm already succeeding because here I am sitting with you on this lovely Sunday evening talking
mhm,
about hope and talking about what it means, or talking about how we put two and two together in order to look at a brighter future, right? That's hopeful right there. Finding people that inspire us and help show us that there's hope in the process
yeah,
that
yeah,
we're going through. That's huge, right? Because life is so uncertain right now with
mhm,
everything that's going on. And so yeah, I'm just really super excited to see how, now that I'm done with the essentials track, with the first part,
mhm,
I'm not done. I start again in 3 weeks with the signature track, and
right,
then I
right,
won't be done with that until 2022, and that's when
mhm,
I'll be like, that's the optimal goal for me, because I decided to do all of it.
yeah,
um those that graduated with me and are not doing the signature track, those really do feel like they're done, and that must be a great feeling. But
Mhm.
I don't feel like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just feel
Well,
like now I have a registered business, but I'm still figuring out and learning every day, and just super blessed to be able to serve my clients and talk about hope.
right. I chose signature as well because I wanted a friend told me, no, you want the international like credential. They said you're gonna have to pay extra for it, but that's what you want because then he said if you don't have especially since I don't have a master's degree, and that that if I'm there's a lot of people going around, and that credential and not beyond the certification gives some legitimacy if you have some doubts about whether people are going to just hand you that legitimacy. And oftentimes legitimacy is not handed to people; it's earned. But yeah, I want to make sure that when is your bedtime, because I want to make sure you said you're very strict about that. I want to make sure that we're not cutting into that too much. But
No.
basically, one thing I wanted to ask you finally was, um, when you meet people in this program or just in general who seem like their light has not only dimmed but that they've also kind of extinguished their own flame in a sense, where they feel like they can't see the light within themselves to illuminate their own path, where do you think that they should start if all they see is darkness and they feel like they're living in a world of just complete blindness?
I mean, you just painted a pretty bleak picture, my friend. But
That
I'll
was
tell you this.
intentional.
Here's and this is me having a perfect brightness of hope. Are you ready?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, first of all, the fact that I would meet this person already means that they got up in the morning and they took a step towards something.
Mhm.
So, the world is not that dark and it's not that bleak,
Mhm.
in my opinion, because they already did that, right? The whole concept of the hopeless romantic that we have in Hollywood, the hopeless romantic is hopeless because he does nothing to get the girl.
Mhm.
Someone with hope
Interesting.
finds a way. So where there is a will, there is a way. So the fact that I would be in a conversation with this person already tells me that
Mhm.
there's a tiny little bit of hope within them that they may not even recognize, right? And that's where I come in, just me and my personality and my hope and what I want to share. And, probably I may freak them out and they might label me as the crazy lady who they don't want to talk to at the park. Or maybe they, are taken by me and they want to have a conversation. And really,
Mhm.
that's really all that it is about. Because so that's where radical acceptance comes in. Once you
Right.
accept that you're at any point in your life, whether that's a dark one or not, once you accept it, you are self-aware of that one thing, and that's enough to then build from it.
Right.
Whether it's with the help of a coach or a therapist or your pastor or your principal or your
Mhm.
spouse, do I believe that we can do it alone? I do, but is it as fun or as rewarding as doing it with someone else? Yeah, no, it's not. It really isn't.
No, and it's a lot harder. What you said about hopeless romantics kind of ruined an axiom of mine, but I still loved what you said. I always say hopeless romantic is an oxymoron, but it's it's that's so true what you just said though. The fact that like someone is a hopeless romantic if they are just sitting around like kind of waiting for it to come to them because they're afraid of. Oh, that kind of that's kind of like cynical romance, though, or at least skeptical romance, where it's like, just
Well, here's the thing about romance is that it's not really about relationships, right? So
right.
you can romanticize. um I
And
romanticized coming to America. Let's call it that. I love that movie. So, I romanticized going from living in the island, which is a tiny island on the map, to moving to the States. And then I got here, and I'm not saying that life in the States is terrible, not at all.
mhm,
This is a great land, right? And this land is your land and my land. But There cultural shocks, realities, lots of things, adulting, making the move when I was 27, which is pretty
Mhm.
late in life, I think. Um, it opened my eyes to the reality of things. And so you can romanticize anything. You can romanticize, the results of something that you put a lot of great effort in, and all of a sudden that's not what happens, what you romanticized about. That's not the reality of it. So what do you do now? Do
Right.
you let it get to you, or do you just build from it and move forward? And so it's like, do you want to just sit in the corner and, like you said, just wait for things to come to you? What
Mhm.
are the chances that they are really going to come to you with no effort at all? Or
Right.
what are the chances that they're actually going to, happen if you take the tools and work for it?
And effort implies the possibility of, failure or rejection, and that's, I think, what a lot of people are afraid of. But once we romantics, and like you said, in the broadest sense of the word, um I think are hopeful people. They just are. They're people, and even if the image turns out to have a few, even if the, image they paint turns out to have a few more, like, pock marks than they envisioned, they're still able to find the beauty in it anyway.
Mhm.
um all right. Is there anything else you want to share, Graciela? Where can people find you? And also, actually, I do have one more question. One last thing.
Okay.
Um, how does so how do you incorporate music into your practice, if at all? Because you said you come from a musical background. That's something that I remembered I wanted to get back to, and I had not quite gotten back to it yet.
So I actually don't. Other than, I thought to myself the other day, well, not really the other day. I thought to myself a while ago that because I went through the trouble of learning a brand new instrument as an adult,
Hmm.
I could somehow coach people through the same process. However, I'm not a music teacher at all. I don't know any type of history or, essential knowledge of music other than picking up an instrument and being able to do this or that with it,
Hmm.
and the entertainment that comes from it. Singing is really it for me, and I'm not really that good of a singer. Like, I don't belong on The Voice or anything like that. But it's I really don't incorporate it in my coaching at all, other than, if you want to use your gifts,
Right.
then we can definitely relate, and we should definitely talk about that. What do you do with your gift? Whether it's, so for me at this point, playing an instrument comes just into the mindfulness side of my life,
Mhm.
because an exercise of mindfulness is not just journaling or meditating, but playing an instrument is also a way to practice mindfulness. Okay, well, then that's one of the things I can do for mindfulness.
Right.
Great. Do you play an instrument? Well, then if you want to be more of a mindful person, then incorporating just maybe 10 minutes of that instrument into your day is going to work wonders for your brain.
Hmm.
Other than that, I don't think I'm qualified to do any coaching in terms of music or, the music
Right.
industry, I guess. Unless you're having anxiety about going on auditions, then I can definitely help
Yeah.
you for that. That's where the confidence comes in and the hope.
Exactly. Gotcha. All right. Well, Graciela, this has been great. Before you go, is
Yeah,
there anything
thank
else you want to
you.
share? And also, where can people find you? Where can they look you up? Where can they find your Hope series?
Yeah, so Hope series. So this Monday, I'm not sure where this is going live, but this today is Saturday, and this Monday is part 2 of the series.
Hmm.
If this is going on the air later on, then probably the Hope series is already done. It's actually going to be on the Tat Lab, so it may not be done. And anyone who wants to do the Hope series one-on-one can definitely find it on my website. So the website is
Hmm.
somcoaching.com. So like Song of Myself Coaching, somcoaching.com. You can find me on Instagram, songofmyself.ig. That's where I'm always at. So if you ever want to connect with me and just chat
Hmm.
before getting into that 30-minute call with me as a coach, then by all means, please reach out through Instagram or leave a comment on a post. And you know, if you're listening and you're in Journey, then you can find me on the page because I'm always there. Yeah, and I
Awesome.
appreciate you so much, John. Super, super excited to have this conversation with you and to be able to, you know, share my story. I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah, likewise. And the Hope series, just to be clear, it's next week, the following week, and the following week, right?
Correct. That's right.
Okay. I will try to get this released then, probably not this coming week, but the following week, and then that should
Yeah.
be, and because I want to get it released before that's all done at the very least.
Yeah, well, even if the first 4 weeks are done, again, anybody who wants to share the experience and go through the experience, we can do it one-on-one, and it is just as impactful to do it one-on-one as to do it in the group setting. Still,
Awesome, great to hear. And send me any links you want to put in the show notes, and I'll edit this and we'll put it up. And Graciela, this has been great, and congratulations
thank you.
on your certification as well, and and also on the continuation of the Hope series and on the continuation of your coaching journey.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate you. Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.